Right, you've had about a year or so to get used to the styling of the new Defender 110. What do you think? Fan or non-fan? Me, I quite like it, but if Land Rover had called it the 6th generation Discovery, I probably wouldn't have blinked. But this looks like a Defender. This is the new Defender 90, and if this shorter version silhouette is an even closer interpretation of the original 1948 Land Rover, our test car's exterior spec takes the imitation even further. Pangea green paintwork, white contrast roof, brilliant white steel wheels, even the fabric roof, kind of. No mud flaps, but hey, you can get those as an option too. And you know what? I think this is exactly how I'd spec my Defender 90.
As with the 110, you can configure this Defender to your heart's content. Aside from 6 trim grades, there are 170 odd individual options, including a multitude of wheel types and roof styles. And yes, full gangster spec is available. There's also an array of option packages and no shortage of accessories. We're told Defender buyers are 3 times more likely to buy accessories than any other Land Rover. That arguably makes starting prices almost irrelevant, though for the record the Defender 90 costs from just under $75,000 and beyond $200,000 if you want the V8 model. Across the range it's only about an extra $3,000 for the much bigger 110, which probably goes some way to explaining why only 1 out of 5 Defender buyers are expected to opt for the 90.
The visual differences side-on of the 90 and the 110 probably don't need too much of an explanation. Just to say that there's 43.5 centimetres difference in length, and that all comes in the wheelbase. The distance between the front and rear axles, the ridiculously short front and rear overhangs, they're shared with the 110, which make both Defenders very good at getting up and down hills. Also shared with the 110, the side hinged tailgate, another retro nod, but this one's assisted. The 90 naturally has less interior space than the 110, and that's most noticeable in the boot. Just 240 litres up to the waistline according to Land Rover. Now my Volkswagen Up microcar has a bigger luggage capacity than that. 40-20-40 split fold rear seats, so that's good, just like the 110, but unlike the 110, they don't fold completely flat. And you've also got this aluminium strip along here, which is a protector for the bottom of the seats. So that's not ideal. But look, most buyers that go for a 90 are not going to have kids, singles, couples. You know, they're into their lifestyle. And I can tell you that a full-size racing bike can fit in here without taking off a wheel. The doors are wider than the front doors on the 110 for obvious reasons, not just design, but to help access into the rear seat. And also exclusive to the 90 are tilt and slide front seats. You pull that forward, a little bit of a clamber up. You could do maybe a grip here to help you get in, or maybe a side step, and guess what, side steps are an accessory option. But the aperture, that's pretty good. That's not too bad for getting in. You do lose some leg room in the 90 compared with the 110, but look at this. This is plentiful for adults. Foot space, that's good. Headroom, maybe that could be a little bit more generous, but you know, we do have this sunroom in place. And because of the width of the car, about 2 meters, you could actually get 3 adults across this bench, I reckon, and particularly as the floor is flat. In fact, I'll just shuffle across to see that. Yeah, that's pretty comfortable. The only thing I'd say, the bench itself, it is a bit flat. I do find that I'm slipping about a bit in it, so it could be a little bit more supportive in that respect. One of the bonuses to being in the rear seat rather than up front is that you get to appreciate more retro nods like the Alpine window skylights and also this elongated side glass. Though, unlike the original, you can't actually slide this one, despite what that line there might suggest. That's just a fancy window graphic.
Rear passengers also get ports galore for 12-volt accessories and electronic devices, and the seat backs also include Land Rover's click and go system, which allows the fitment of folding mini tables or tablet holders. The floor areas by the outboard seats feature a bottle holder and storage tray. Passengers also get panic grips for more adventurous trips.
Up front, the dash is identical to that of the 110s, and I think it's still one of my favourite Land Rover interior designs. It's a fantastic blend of luxuriousness and ruggedness. The luxury touches come in the squidginess of so much of the materials that you get on the doors and the dash, and the tough look, well, that comes from retro nods like these exposed screw heads, visible paintwork, and this cross-carb beam dash, which has an upper lower bar, and this white background here, which you can have in different colours, and it also creates this rather useful storage shelf here and right across the cabin. Also got white spokes on the steering wheel, but of course you can have your cabin finished in an array of different colours and different leathers. It's up to you, just get on the configurator. Now, one option our test car also comes with is a front jump seat, turning this car from a 5-seater into a 6-seater or 5+1. And all you do is just flip it up just like that. Now, I had my 8-year-old son in the front seat the other day in the middle, and he absolutely loved it, and I became the best dad in the world. Though I'd like to think I was previously the best dad in the world. Anyway, very useful feature. Does block rear view vision though, this skyscraper headrest there, which is probably why Land Rover forces you to also get their clear sight rear view mirror, which is a very clever feature, not exclusive to the 90 of course, it's on some other Land Rover models. And all you do, you flip the tab here, and then you get a video feed from the antenna camera on the back. Really clever, really simple, and if you want to go back to a normal mirror, you just flip it back like that. Now, when it's folded down and not in use, it just becomes a center console, a couple of cup holders there, but it is a bit bulky and it does feel a little bit intrusive when you're driving along, but I'd still be tempted to get the jump seat. Normal center console is standard, but there's also a walkthrough option.
Of course, the fully digital driver display and 10-inch centre touchscreen, or its 11.4-inch cost alternative, are anything but 1940s vintage. Land Rover's new Pivi Pro infotainment display and interface improves upon the company's stylish but flawed Touch Pro system. Presentation, response, resolution and intuitiveness are all a step forward. The digital instrument cluster can be customised, including a full-screen nav map option. Accessing information and changing layouts, done via steering wheel buttons, just seems slightly more complicated than it needs to be.
I drove the old Defender across the outback and even across the Simpson Desert over a week. That was an absolutely epic drive and I absolutely loved that Defender. Going across some of Australia's biggest sand dunes, I just felt fearless. But when I got to a multi-storey car park in the city, it was frightening. The anachronistic charms of that vehicle soon wore off. That wide turning circle, glacial steering response, bouncy ride, yeah, it wasn't fun to live with. But let's see how this new 90 gets on. We're about to go into a multi-storey car park. Now this vehicle is nearly 2 meters tall and the sign is saying 2.1 meters are. I'm going to put the air suspension into its lowest mode. There we go. Okay, here we go. I still feel very close to the roof, but we seem to be going okay over a little bump. Still no scraping the roof. All right, let's go with try out some of these ramps, which I don't know why, but engineers always seem to make them far narrower than they seem to need to be. But here we go in the 90. Right, up ramp. Oh. How easy is that? In the old Defender, the arms would have been all over the place like this, crossing over each other, because the steering was so slow, and because of that wide turning circle, you'd sometimes be doing 3-point, even 5-point turns when you've got to transition from one ramp to the next one that's really close together. Some of these car parks are really not that well designed, but look, this is just effortless in the new Defender 90. If you want, you can even use the camera system. Make it even easier if you're really worried about scraping a tyre. And look, we can go here, we can even go to the off-road mode and we can go to the front camera like this, and we've got the magic invisible bonnet technology. That's supposed to be for helping to know where you're going over really tricky terrain, but well, sometimes car parks are tricky terrain. But look at that, you can see we've got good clearance on the ramp. Lovely. And even, yeah, look, this is a vehicle that's quite blocky. It's nearly 2 meters tall. It's 2 meters wide. But it's just so easy to maneuver. That's also helped by the elevated seating position. This is really hard. We're talking like Range Rover, like not your average SUV, say like an Audi Q3. And so the forward vision is excellent in this car. even despite the fact that you've got these chunky A-pillars and quite blocky side mirrors. It's just really easy to place the vehicle. Now that air suspension is an option, about $1,300 or so. I think it's worth ticking because it gives you more options for off-roading, which is something you definitely should do if you own one of these Defenders, because it increases the ride height up to about 291 millimeters ground clearance. That is really high. It increases the breakover angle to about 31 degrees. That's even better than the 110, which is about 28 degrees. But I think it's also likely that it improves ride comfort. Now, the 90 doesn't ride quite as well as the 110. It's not quite as compliant, it's a little thumpier over potholes, and there's also more of a forward-backward pitching motion when you're driving along. Now, that is an inevitable consequence of its shorter wheelbase. Would it put me off buying a 90 over a 110? No. The 90 is about 100 kilos lighter than the 110, although it's lightweight at 2.3 tons. But with those compact dimensions, it naturally feels more nimble around town than the larger Defender. And because of those more compact dimensions and that lighter weight, it also feels more eager when you're turning it into corners. What it does share with the 110 is really lovely steering accuracy, really nice weighting, and a planted feel out on a country road that would just feel alien to anyone that's driven a Series 3 or an old Defender. As with the 110, you've got quite a few engine options with the 90, a couple of diesels and a few petrols, including a V8 at the top of the range. Now the diesels, they're both new Ingenium 6-cylinder turbo engines. They both replace four-cylinder diesels that were available initially with the 110, but they've also been ditched for that variant. We've got the D250, which is the torquier of the two diesels, 570 Newton meters rather than 500 Newton meters. You can't get the D300 engine that's available on the 110, which is even more torquier again, but I think the D250 for this slightly lighter and smaller Defender is more than ample for its performance. And I can tell you, this is, again, it's far removed from the diesel of old Defenders. There's nothing truck-like about this engine. It's refined, it's smooth, and it's grunty as well. That's the other thing that's really un-diesel-like about it, particularly in a four-wheel drive context, is that it actually sounds better the more you rev it. I honestly didn't think I'd like this D250 straight six diesel as much as its petrol sibling, the P400, which is a cracker of an engine. Performance 0 to 100, if that really matters to anyone, is 8 seconds, so it's nearly 2 seconds quicker than the D200. Most buyers of the Defender 90 will go for a petrol engine, so that is somewhere where it does differ over the 110, where that's more of a 50-50 split. The 8-speed auto is also excellent at shuffling gears to keep the engine on its toes. The low rev response of the engine is helped by some mild hybrid technology based around a 48-volt battery, and even when you just lift off like this and go back on the accelerator again, yeah, pretty good response, not perfect, a little bit of lag, but this is a really strong performance. Again, if you want another significant contrast with an old Defender, we've actually got sound deadening here. So the engine noise is muted, and even the road noise is muted, which is quite surprising considering that we're on Goodyear Wrangler all-terrain tyres. The only intrusive element you get really is once you're at higher speeds, particularly on a freeway, wind noise around the windscreen and the A-pillars is quite noticeable.
So, would you go short wheelbase Defender or long wheelbase Defender? Well, the 110 is far better value in my opinion, and it's certainly far more practical. Yet the new era 90 Shorty, well, it's better equipped for those daily expeditions into the suburban jungle. And it's the 90 Defender that's got personality and desirability in even bigger spades.
Me, I quite like it, but there's a car coming.